When you guys came together for the first time, was it that instant? Did you just know straight away that it was going to be right? Or did you have to
Oddly
work very
enough,
hard on it?
it was. I mean, a mutual friend, Bobby and I were raised in Orange County, Anaheim and Santa Ana. And I knew of Bobby and Bobby knew of me. He had a group, I had a group. And, but a friend of ours was doing a lot of work in Vegas, and he wanted to kind of put together a group that would work all the time. He was coming back to Orange County. So he took Bobby and Bobby's drummer and myself and my guitar player and put us together. Yeah, it was kind of immediate. The minute Bobby and I were absolutely, we only met when we were like 21, but when we were 15 years old, he was in Anaheim listening to this black radio station. I was in Santa. So we were listening to the same stuff. So when we got together and started singing together, it was magical. I don't know if it was magical for the people in the club, but it was magical for Bobby and I, because we just sang this. It was like two guys in one voice, you know. It was just so much fun. And Bobby was such a great singer that it was effortless. I mean, it was just great.
When it came to song choices, of course, because Bobby sang obviously the solo vocal on Unchained Melody on the album Just Once in My Life. What do you recall now? You know, now that Bobby's passed, what do you recall about that song with his vocal?
We were recording with Phil Spector at the time, and Phil asked me, before Love and Feeling, Bobby and I had 2 or 3 kind of rock and rhythm and blues albums, and I produced those. So Phil asked me to produce the Righteous Brother albums because he was going to take too long and spend too much money and all that. Was getting ready to produce it, and Bobby would usually do a solo on an album, and I would do a solo. And I asked Bobby what he wanted to do, and he said, how about Unchained Melody? Because we loved Roy Hamilton, and Roy Hamilton we did everything Roy Hamilton ever recorded. And Bobby said, I'd like to do Unchained Melody. So I said, okay. So I went in and I arranged it. I played piano and I produced it. Phil Spector took it and put it on the B-side of Hung on You, which was written by Carol and Jerry Carole King. And he always put stuff on the B-side that was so bad that they would play the song that he produced, you know. And Hung on You was a great song, but for some reason, every disc jockey in the country just turned it over and played Unchained Melody. And then thank God for Ghost. Jesus, I mean, now it's just probably the biggest song that we had. It was a strange thing to have happen, being produced by Phil Spector, and then having a hit that I produced. And I'm not a producer, man. I leave that up to the real guys. But so it was. But Bobby sang, boy, he sang the hell out of it, and he's just a great singer. And we were in Gold Star, which everybody wanted to record in Gold Star. And so I called him in to do his vocal. He came in, he sang it twice, killed it. He left and he came back in, said, Bill, I have an idea. He said, when it comes to this one place, punch me in and then punch me out right here. And I said, okay. But I said, because it was probably 2 or 3 track. So when you punched in, you were erasing whatever you had. I said, you better have a good idea. This better be a good idea. So I punched in and he did, he did that real high, beautiful thing, which he took the melody up, an octave or whatever. And it was just beautiful. And he said, I can do it better. And he was famous for that. I can do it better. I never did it better. Couldn't. I said, no, man, you can't do this better. I said, get out of here. But that wasn't supposed to be in the song. And that's really a big part of the song, is that
beautiful part of the song. Absolutely.
Isn't it? Yes, beautiful.
Now, you mentioned earlier growing up on R&B records. It must have been pretty huge deal for you then to have R&B stations playing your music. I mean, were you the first, artist to have that happen?
After the Righteous Brothers did what we did, then it became pretty commercial, white guys singing. So it wasn't a very commercial thing. It was a horrible thing to do. Two white guys from Orange County singing rhythm and blues. And because black stations wouldn't play it because you were white. It wasn't a racial thing. Opera stations weren't playing us either.
Sure.
But the white stations wouldn't play us because they thought we were black. And the record sounded, or at least a loopy-loo. And so it was a very not commercial thing to do. I'm not saying that. And so we kind of opened up that door, and there was a million guys behind that door. The Righteous Brothers just kind of opened up the door to where it was now, damn near a commercial thing to do. Here come the Stones and, all kinds of, Joe Cocker and all, just some great blue-eyed singers. But it was phenomenal when we first went out to promote Little Latin Loopy-Loo. It was being played on all the black stations because Atlantic Records, they distribute it. When we would show up at the radio station, they'd say, well, we're the Righteous Brothers. They say, well, you better be the band. We said, no. Me and this little blonde kid, we're the Righteous Brothers. And so that we would do the interview, and then they would kind of have to take the record off. And so Loopy-Loo kind of became a West Coast hit. And but then when Love and Feelin' hit, the black stations, because I think Love and Feelin' was #1 rhythm and blues. I'm not sure. That might be one of the lies I'm going to tell you. But
it was a massive hit. I think massive hit is fine.
So when the black stations accepted it and said, come on, man, these guys, they're the real deal. And so one, I think it was a disc jockey in Philadelphia, maybe, started saying, here's my blue-eyed soul brothers, really hipping his audience to the fact that here's two white guys singing You've Lost That Love and Feeling. And somehow, some way, Blue-Eyed Soul caught on, and then we were kind of called the Blue-Eyed Soul Brothers, and which was wonderful because it came from the black disc jockeys, and the same with our name, the Righteous Brothers. When Bobby and I first got together, we were working in this small little nightclub, and Orange County was very white back then, very, very white. But there was a Marine base, El Toro Marine base, and a lot of the black Marines heard that there was these two guys down the club singing R&B. So they started coming in. And in those days, if you had a nice shirt or a great looking car, they would say, boy, what a righteous looking car, which meant good. And if they liked you as a friend, they'd call you a brother. And a lot of times we'd come to work and they'd say, hey, Righteous Brother, how you doing? We went in and recorded Little Latin Loopy-Loo, and we didn't have a name. So I think it was Bobby that said, let's just call ourselves what the Marines have been called, the Righteous Brothers. So the black Marines named us, and then the black disc jockeys. So we were very proud of that,
Beautiful.
If we would have made it up or something, it would have been pretty sketchy. But
No, I think that's absolutely beautiful. So, Little Latin Loopy Lou, that was named after your girlfriend from high school. Is that correct?
when I was 17 years old, I was one of those dumb guys that quit high school when I was 16.
Just you did okay, Bill. You did okay.
I did all right. I did all right. Just like Billy Joel didn't graduate either, and they gave him a diploma, and he said, "Thank God, now I can get out of this dead-end job." I went to beauty school to be a hairdresser, and I was far from being a hairdresser. But I went to school because my mom was.
You must remember this in the 60s when they, on the first album with the Beatles, they interviewed Ringo. You remember this? And they said, "What are you going to do after this ends?" Because they all thought it was going to last a year. And he goes, "I'm going to open a hairdresser's."
Well, I should have told, we did the first American Beatle tour. I should have told him we'll open up a salon together.
It's never too late.
It's never, well, you're right. But Loopy was going to the hairdressing school, and we met and started dating, and then I wrote the song. Really, the name Little Latin Loopy, it just seemed like a fun commercial, thing to do, and so it worked out. I mean, and I saw Loopy, oddly enough, about a year ago. So we were unfortunately at a funeral of a friend of ours, and she looked great, and I don't think her husband's very happy about it, but nothing I can do about that.
When you were recording You've Lost That Loving Feeling, and this is like a fan kind of question, did you know it was going to be a hit? Did you know it was as special as we all know it is?
No. We wished it would have been a hit when we finished it, and because we certainly worked hard on it. I mean, Phil Spector really pushed us, which normally we wouldn't have been okay with, because we were rhythm and blues singers and we just did, whatever felt emotional. But Lovin' Feelin' was so melodic, and great song Barry and Cynthia wrote. And but no, the song was too long. In those days, 60, 64, 65, song had to be about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes at most, and Lovin' Feelin' was over 4 minutes. Phil Spector put on the record that it was 3 something, but it was 4 minutes long. So it was too long. It was too slow. It was too dramatic. And whoever was singing that song sounded like he was on the wrong speed. It felt like you'd be, "You never close your eyes anymore," instead of "You never close," it's like, wow, So we thought, God, man, I wish that would be a hit. And I think probably because of all the reasons that it was wrong, kind of became the reasons that it became so big, and that's the one thing that we kind of figured out later, that You Lost That Lovin' Feelin' was probably one of the first real dramatic love songs for the younger generation. So I think it touched the younger generation in that way, that it was a serious love song. You've lost that lovin' feeling.
Absolutely.
Even though some people have said, we had that sang at our wedding. I said, it says you've lost that lovin' feeling. It's a good divorce song, but not. But anyway, no, we didn't think it would be a hit.
Your baritone is just so rich; it just sucks you right in. I think I don't want to speak for women, but I think for women, it's manly, it's inviting, and then for guys, it's like, yeah, this is a guy singing a song. You know what I mean? It has, I think all of us can identify with it. Beautiful vocals, beautiful song.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's a great song. I mean, I still do it. Obviously today in the shows, you never get tired of it. A great song is a great song is a great song, and Phil Spector killed it. I mean, he just, if you sit, with earphones on and listen to Love and Feeling and realized it was recorded on 3 or 4 track. And I sat there and watched him do the rhythm track. There was probably like 15 people in there doing 3 or 4 guitars, 3 pianos, 2 basses, percussion guy, drums. And in those days, when he said, okay, that's it, that was it. It was EQ'd, the verb, everything had to be done. And you listen to it today, and shakers and this and that. And Barney Kessel, a great guitar player, jazz guitar player, but
incredible guitar player.
He, in Love and Feeling, in the chorus, and I know I heard it when he was doing the track. I said, Phil, Barney Kessel is playing El Paso in the chorus. Down, 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 do, down, 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 do, down. And it was, you lost that love, and down, down, down. And he says, no, and I think I don't think he was telling me the truth. He said, no, that's a passage from some symphony thing. I don't know, but he was playing El Paso, and of course, Glenn Campbell and these other guys were ching, ching, ching. And that was basically the wall of sound, was everybody doing the same thing. And he would sit there for maybe an hour synthesizing the 3 or 4 guitar, and then go to the pianos, and he had maybe electronic piano, maybe a stand-up piano, a real piano, and mix those together. And so that's really what the wall of sound was. And then he would do these great little percussion things in there, and then the strings, but the horns would just hold those pads. Today you'd use a synth that just holding pad, but and the voices were just, so it's almost, even though he used 1 million people, they were all doing basically the same thing, and that's the wall of sound. And
incredible.
He was flat out a genius.
And this was a Gold Star?
Gold Star. Everybody
tracking live together. Was there any kind of overdubs, or was it just?
The truth is I heard that, and I don't know if Phil told me this, that we lost 13 generations. Would that be the right things? Generations, an overdub?
Yes, generations makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. I think when he made the track, I think he had a little too much highs and a little too much bottoms. So by the time you do the overdubs, it kind of came pushed together. The guy was brilliant. He just knew exactly what he wanted to hear at the final product. And we overdubbed. Then I think he probably overdubbed the strings and then the horns and then some little percussion stuff. So 13 generations sounds like too many, but he probably overdubbed 10 times, where today you use 100 tracks. He used 3 or 4 tracks. Pretty amazing.
Absolutely. Now, you said earlier that he worked you really hard.
Yeah.
Can you describe that process on the vocals?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, every time you did it again, you were erasing whatever you got. We worked 2 days on it.
Wow.
Probably 2 8-hour days. But every time we did it, it got better and better. And I think we were we were rhythm and blues singers. And I'm a blues singer, not a great blues singer, but I'm a blues singer. And so it kind of took me a while to gear into this real melodic, note for note for note. When you're doing blues, every day I have the blues. Well, you can do that a million different ways, but you can't. You never close your eyes. You write on it, and you lost that love, and And so, yeah, he just knew exactly what he wanted. And when we first met with Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil and Phil, because when he called Barry and said, I'm going to record the Righteous Brothers, write a song for him. And why they wrote Love and Feeling, I don't have a clue, because it just wasn't where we were coming from. They sang it for me, and for Bobby and I, and both of us said, what a great song for the Everly Brothers. We recorded it in C. You never, about right there. But he wrote it and played it for us in about E, which is, a third up from the C. And it was faster. They kind of wrote, you never close your eyes anymore when I kiss your kind of, and I couldn't get, you lost that love, I just couldn't get tight enough pants to get that note. We had to lower it, go to from E to E flat. And every time we would lower it, Phil would slow it down. And I still couldn't get the note. And by the time we started at you never close your eyes anymore. By the time we finished in C, you never close your eyes. Whole different song. It was real weird because that was the first time I used my baritone voice. I think I recorded Old Man River just to show off or something. I don't know. But, or just show I could hit those notes. But, it was the first time I used that voice. And then every song after that, now I've had every song, Carol, there's a lot of things I want. Everything started out that way. But I'm not knocking it.
No, so that's interesting. So you brought the key down for the high note, 2 tones, 2 full steps, and that gave you that rich, you have the rich baritone, but that helped everybody hear how unique your rich baritone voice is. That's amazing.
Barry Mann writes, and he wrote the melody. Synth writes the lyrics, but it's a 2-octave song. That doesn't sound big or bad, but 2 octaves is a bunch. I'm starting on a G note. You never close your, you lost that love and feet. That's an F. So thank God, man. Thank God he wrote that high note. Beautiful. So the high note took me down to the low notes. That was very cool.
You opened for the Beatles on their very first US tour. I can't imagine what that would have been like. Well,
first off, we kind of heard maybe a record or something on the Beatles. And like I said, and this was before Love and Feeling. Yeah, we got the offer to go on the Beatle tour. But we didn't know that what was going to happen and I'm not sure that they did either, but it was the most unbelievable tour, that certainly we ever did. And they were great, and they're great guys, and obviously brilliant writers. And Brian Epstein, while we were on the tour, asked us, he wanted to manage us. Said, no, yeah. Said, no, you're going to have enough trouble with these 4 guys.
You'll be busy with them, yes.
Yeah. We'll see how you do with them. And then but halfway through the tour, we went to Brian and said, listen, we have an offer to do a TV show at home, and we need to go home and do the LA, do the pilot. And it was a show called Shindig, which became huge in at least the States. So we left that tour early, and then we did the first Rolling Stone tour. They asked us, and when we did that tour, it was kind of a Southern California tour, and we were pretty big then. We might have been bigger than the Stones the first weekend. then by the second weekend, but
well, I was going to ask you about that with the Beatles, because did you just sort of see it explode over the whole tour? The venues just got crazier and crazier.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though every place we went, I said, where are these kids coming from? How do they know who these guys are? And because we were working stadiums and stuff. And I used to say on stage, it was wonderful to be on opening act for the Beatles. One of the kids are screaming and yelling and clapping and screaming, "We want the Beatles! We want the Beatles!" And that's the truth. Because once we got out of California, nobody knew who we were, and so that was a little scary. But it was, but yeah, just to watch what happened. I mean, we later obviously realized that we had a front row seat to history.
So Beatles to Stones, I mean, two of the biggest bands of all time. I suppose British bands weren't lining up to book you to open for them. Just to got to get those Righteous Brothers on the bill. That's how you make it.
That's how you do it.
That's how you do it.
Looking back, to leave the Beatle tour halfway through was maybe the stupidest thing in the world you could do. It turned out to be the best thing that we could do, because this TV show, Shindig, was a national show, and it was at the same time kind of that we recorded Love and Feeling. So it just worked out great. But it's, and I saw the Stones not long ago, and I had a long talk with Keith, and they were such good guys, man. And and they hadn't made it yet. So it was a little earthier of a situation with the Stones, because the Beatles thing had blown up. I mean, you couldn't even get near them. I mean, until we were on the plane. But the Stones, it was much, it was a little more relaxed.
From one megastar to another megastar to a third megastar, you got to hang out with Elvis. In your book, you talk about playing some solo gigs in 1968 at the Sands, and he came to see you.
Elvis used to come and see us in 63. I mean, he loved little Latin. He loved the Righteous Brothers, that because he loved black, music, and he was living in LA, and so him and his boys would come to see us, even in the 60s. Then we started doing Shindig, and he would call every time, or have one of his people call and say, "Have the Righteous Brothers do a little Latin Oopie-Loo again. Do it." And so they would ask us to do it all the time, because they were trying to get Elvis on the show. And I was working Vegas. I had left the Righteous Brothers in 68 for about 5 years. And so I was doing a lot of stuff on my own, and I was working in Vegas, and Elvis would come in and see me in the 60s. And then he opened, in Vegas in what was it, 69, 70, something like that. And my contract ran out at the Sands, and I don't know if Elvis did this or not, but anyway, where Elvis was working at the Hilton, I got a gig there working in the lounge, which seated 600 people. It was a huge, huge lounge. B.B. King played it in the Fort Tie. It was a great room. He would do an 8 o'clock show. I would do 10 o'clock. He would do 12, and I would do 2 o'clock. That's how Vegas worked. And so before his second show, he would call me in the dressing room and say, "Bill, come on down," and so probably, I don't know, over the 2 or 3 years that we worked, together, that probably 100 times I would go down. It would be just Elvis's hairdresser, and me. So we got I got to know Elvis on a real one-on-one, deal, and which was great. I mean, we both were motorcycle guys, and he loved bass singers, so he thought and black bass singers. So he thought I was a black bass singer. And but we had a lot in common, and so it was great to get to know Elvis like that, because all of us, all artists, are one way until people gather around and his boys or this, and then it becomes, kind of shuck and jive, and you go into your Elvis mode, or you go into your righteous, you're not Bill Medley anymore, you're Bill Righteous. And so it was great to have that time with Elvis. Yeah.
I love in your book you talk about, and there's audio recordings of this, telling concert goers to go and head over to the lounge to see my good friend Bill Medley perform.
God, what would I pay to have that?
Yep.
After every one of his shows, the tape would come on. Yeah, go see my friend Bill. I would pay $100,000 just to have that.
Yeah.
There's only a few things in this life that I would like. That, and I sang a duet with Sarah Vaughan on the Glenn Campbell show, and I can't get it anywhere. I would love to have that, but that tape was pretty special.
From your book, The Time of My Life, it sounds like Frank Sinatra treated you and Bobby almost like family, like younger brothers. He called you the kids.
The kids. And we were kids. We were 20, 25. Frank Sinatra, he owned Las Vegas. And he was at the Sands, which was the biggest hotel in the world at the time. When Frank Sinatra would come to work, kind of like Elvis, the whole town would fill up. And there wasn't a lot of town then. Whoever was booking the Sands, Jack and Trotta, would have to ask Frank Sinatra, who do you want in the lounge while you're here? Because he had a million stars come from Hollywood to see his show, and he would take them into the lounge. Now, normally it would be Louis Prima and Keely Smith or some, a different era. And for some reason, our name came up, and Nancy Sinatra and Tina must have been in the room at the time, because I don't have a clue why he said, yeah, bring the Righteous Brothers in. Because, come on, in 65, Frank Sinatra and the Righteous Brothers were a million miles away from each other. But for some reason, he bought into us. And because I don't think he liked rock and roll, but we weren't really doing rock and roll. And we had a horn band, 4 or 5 piece horn band, and the Blossoms were singing with, and he would bring all of his people in. We always knew when he was coming in, because from the edge of the stage all the way to the back, there was an empty row, and we were doing really good business. And so to have an empty row would be very weird. And there would be a bottle of Jack Daniels at every table. And so we knew Frank Sinatra and his people were coming in. And one night, he couldn't go on for some reason. So they said, well, boy, should we call Dean Martin? Should we call Sammy? Who are we going to get? He said, I want the kids to replace me. And it was the Count Basie Band.
Oh, wow.
With Quincy Jones conducting.
Oh.
Yeah. So he said, I want the kids to replace me. So we're replacing Frank Sinatra, which was, God bless Frank for doing that. But boy, his audience and our audience were a million miles away. But yeah, he called us the kids. And we went in, when we first met Frank Sinatra, they said, we're going to take you in and have your picture taken with Frank Sinatra after the show, his show. We said, okay, that's cool. And kind of, and I don't know that I should say this, but kind of to Bobby and I, we just felt Frank Sinatra, he's the old guy in the I mean, we all obviously knew who Frank Sinatra, but he's the little guy in the showroom. We certainly found out who Frank Sinatra was, and we knew who Frank was. But anyway, they took us back, and we took our picture, and they said, don't talk to him. Just take your picture, and we'll get out of there. We said, fine. Took the picture, and we started to leave. And he said, wait a minute, how's the reed? The voice, because he was a big band singer, and the reed is saxophone. And how's your reed? I said, well, I beg your pardon, I'm not the sax player. He said, no, how's your voice doing? I said, man, we're struggling. It's dry here, and God, we're doing Coco Joe, Little Latin Loop. We're just screaming our brains out for an hour and a half, 3 shows a night. And so he started talking to us. Well, here's what you need to do. And we were in his dressing room, and there was all the stars were in there. And he said, wait a minute. He said, Jilly, take everybody to my suite. I want to talk to the guys. And we sat there and talked to Frank Sinatra for about 45 minutes, him telling us what we need to do and this and that. And because he really knew vocally, he knew a lot about the voice and how you sing correctly. And he said, I want to see you in the health club tomorrow at 5:00. So he turned us on to the health club and saved our life, man. You go into the steam room and get steam on your voice. And because in Vegas, dry. They used to call it Vegas throat. Well, it was just dry, and saved my life. In the health club, every other main room star would be in the health club at 5:00 because Sinatra's in there. And so it was a pretty amazing time, man, to be 25 years old at the Sands Hotel with Frank Sinatra, who was probably the first huge idol then Elvis, then the Beatles. But he was wonderful to us. Just one. Yeah. And we were the kids.
What was interesting is you knew, you were saying, obviously you were more R&B and more rock and roll based, but I can't help but think that what he recognized was just 2 incredible singers. I mean, he's obviously a world famous, world-class jazz singer, but he hears you two. It wasn't just a typical rock and roll voice. You and Bobby have incredible voices.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, without blowing our horn, I'm sure you're right. I think he saw something more than, the bubblegum bitty bop stuff. And I think
it's borne out by the fact that he's sitting you down for 45 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about how to protect your voice in all these long shows.
No, Love and Feeling had become a huge hit. And our agent at the time, Jerry Perenchio, said, I don't know if you'll want to do this, but you guys right now, when you're hot, you should go to Vegas because it'll pay off for you for the rest of your life. And that really meant, that we had to turn down real big money gigs to go break into Vegas, which wasn't as much money. But we did it. And that's when they asked, Sinatra, and it did pay off. It still pays off today. I mean, I reformed the Righteous Brothers about 5 years ago with Bucky Hurd, great singer. And we do a what they call a residency show at Harrah's, probably about 30 weeks out of the year. So Jerry Perenchio was 100% right. It just paid, when the career goes up and down, Vegas, just stayed constant. Yeah, it was a real blessing. Vegas was a blessing. And Frank Sinatra dragging these two white guys that were screaming all night long into the main room was wonderful.
Now, you had a rather wild trip to Brazil with Jimmy Webb for a songwriters competition.
So you've talked to Jimmy, have you?
So can you tell us a little bit about that adventure?
Oh, man. Oh, man. God bless Jimmy. Maybe the greatest. Even Barry Mann will say Jimmy Webb's the greatest songwriter. Phenomenal writer. And I think I was still at the Sands, and he came in to see me, that he was asked to, represent United States at this International Song Festival. And he wrote this song called Evie. And he said, would you come to Brazil and sing it? Be the singer of the song. I said, well, okay. So we went to Brazil, and boy, there was some amazing artists and great singers, great songs, from England, from, Brazil, everywhere. And every night I would sing Evie. And there was this guy from England, and I can't remember his name, but he was a great singer. He was kind of a Tom Jones, Humperdinck singer, great singer, good-looking guy. I called him Mighty Mouth. He was a great singer, and the audiences loved him. United States, the last night that we were doing the show. The English guy, God, I wish I knew his name. Maybe you know him. But he's a great singer. And he sang, and they just wouldn't stop. I think he sang the song 3 times because they wouldn't stop. And it was time for Jimmy and I to do Evie. And he finally had to come out and drape me with the English flag. That's the truth. And Jimmy has pictures of it. And it was heavy. That was huge. And for some reason, I sang the whole song with this draped over me. If I would have said and put it down on the floor, they would have killed me. Probably. And so I sang the whole song. And Jimmy's song came in second. Brazil came in first, I think. And they said, we couldn't let you guys win because they would have killed you. The audience would have killed, or something like that. It was a little political, but it was a great song. It was always a pleasure to sing any song that Jimmy wrote, or
incredible
Barry
writer.
and Cynthia. Just an incredible writer.
When I asked you about his background of, understanding, because he understands chord substitutions, and but to a really high level, he just told me he puts it all down to his piano teacher when he was a teenager. God, I wish we could have had that piano teacher. Obviously he's got something magical about him.
He's a great piano player. Probably studied classical, I would think. I mean, a lot of his chord changes and susses and stuff. Yeah, his dad was a preacher. Matter of fact, I recorded one of his songs that said, my dad was a preacher, a plain self-taught teacher. The world's more confusing to him than for you. He's not well-bred. Just a great song. But his dad was a preacher. So he had that kind of, I think he was in Oklahoma. Was he from Oklahoma?
I think so. That's my recollection.
So he kind of had that Southern gospel thing in him and this kind of classical piano, and he loved the Rolling Stones. So put all that together, you got Jimmy Webb, just the best. He's the best. And it was an honor to work with him, and certainly an honor to be a good friend of Jimmy's. Wonderful guy. I think Lynn Campbell would say the same thing if he was here.
So moving from one incredible songwriter to another, Brian Wilson. You met Brian on the ABC show, Shindig. and also recorded, obviously, in Western studios. And you got to know each other pretty well.
Yeah, I knew Brian before, he had nervous breakdowns or whatever happened there. He was a very, very straight guy, like it seemed like the business was a little over his head or kind of not where he was coming from. Very tender, sweet guy. We worked at Western a lot. He was in one studio, I was in another, and once in a while he would come in when I was recording and pull me into his studio just to say, I need to hear your ears. Is this okay? Or I would bring him in and say, is this, So it was wonderful to get to know Brian on that level, and we kind of remained friends through all of it. I did an album, probably the last album I did was called Damn Near Righteous, and I did it on my own because Bobby had passed. My producer had written this song they wanted me to do, and I didn't like the song. I was a huge Everly Brother fan, huge, which is weird because there's only the white acts were Dion the Belmonts, the Everly Brothers, Elvis, and then that was about it. But I said, if Phil wants to do something, he should come in and sing with me. And Phil said, well, I'd love to. I said, what if we do In My Room? And just by chance, and I have a real good friend, Jeff Foskett, who is Brian Wilson's right-hand guy and this is only 5 or 6, 10 years ago. I said, let's do in my Room, and maybe Brian would come in and do it with us. So I got to do In My Room with Brian Wilson and Phil Everly. I mean, it was, and nobody will ever hear it. The album was distributed by the Secret Service, and nobody heard it, but it's just a really good record. And I loved singing with those two guys. Was, kind of a out of body experience. But Brian, wonderful guy. And when we were doing Shindig, and the Beach Boys came in, I was out on the stage doing something, and Brian came to me and said, Bill, can you come into, I want to play you something I have. And in the bathroom, there was a piano, a huge bathroom, literally, piano in the bathroom, which is perfect for reverb, And he said, would you come in? I want to play you something. Now, to me and Bobby, the Beach Boys were doing If Everybody Had an Ocean, and I'm going, dude, I just wasn't a Beach Boy guy. He said, well, come on. Brian was a real Righteous Brother fan. And so I went in, and there's all the Beach Boys in the bathroom. And tough way to meet guys, but and Brian sat at the piano, and they did a version of the Lord's Prayer, who did Brian love? And Bobby loved him too. Four freshmen. It was that real tight, beautiful harmony and close, stuff I couldn't do with a shotgun to my head. I'm a triad guy. I'll sing the one, you sing the third, and we'll be fine. But this was unbelievable. It was such an out of body experience because I'm sitting there waiting to hear If Everybody Had an Ocean, and they did this Lord's Prayer, just wiped me out. And so I I said, everybody stay right here. And I ran to get Bobby. And I said, Bobby, you got to hear this. You got to hear the Beach Boys do. He said, no, I don't want to. I said, please, man, because Bobby Hatfield loved the Four Freshmen. So we went back and they did it. They did it again. And from that moment on, I was more than a Beach Boy fan. I just, and really got to know how brilliant Brian Wilson was. This was a brilliant guy. And there's only a couple of guys that I would say are very genius-like, and it would be Phil Spector and Brian. Okay. But I got to go with Phil because Brian kind of copped a lot of what Phil Spector was doing in the studio because he was a huge Spector fan. So, but both of those guys, remarkable.
I mean, what a time. You know, when I think about it, you got to work with so many talented people. Carole King, Pauline Love, shared a bill. Everyone talked about this with Sonny and Cher. You performed gospel with the Temptations. You shared the stage with Martha and the Vandellas. It seems like an incredibly collaborative time and such an open time for musicians to get to know each other. Do you think that that's something that's just so, it feels like from our perspective, I suppose, such a special time of the 60s that probably doesn't exist anymore?
No, now I'm just going to sound like an old man.
No, it's okay. We feel that way.
The 60s were magical, and probably because, the world was opening up for Bobby and I. And so that was magical. But boy, being in the studio in those days and trying to create sounds, we did everything in the world to try and get that backbeat bigger and bigger until Martha, was it Martha and the Reeves dancing in the street?
Yep.
They had that great big backbeat.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the studio, we were just doing everything to try and create sounds that we heard and felt, but tried to get them on tape. So, and like we said, you're dealing with, in those days, 4-track, 8-track was a blessing.
Yeah, 8-track.
Yeah, 8-track was wow. And then 24, forget about it. And analog was warmer than, but yeah, I got to know all those. I did a show at Brooklyn Fox, and Bobby couldn't do it. Bobby was having trouble with his back, and it was Love and Feeling was huge. And so I went to go do it. It was me and Motown. I mean,
incredible.
Martha and the Vandellas opened up the show with, heat wave. It's like a heat wave. I was, oh man, and the Temptations. Yeah, I'd go sing gospel music with. But in those days, yeah, you had a chance because there was tours that, Dick Clark did a lot of big tours where you'd take about 10 acts out there, and today that just doesn't happen. I mean, if you see an act 3 times in a year, well, they're one of your closest friends. It's pretty nuts. But boy, 60s, I can't beat it, man. I mean, we were creating rock and roll. Well, the 50s, all these great black artists. Come on, man. I mean, Little Richard is greatest rock and roll singer ever. Still today, greatest rock and roll singer. Then I got into Ray Charles and Bobby Blue Bland and all these guys, BB, and it just was just an incredible time. But a lot of us white guys loved these black singers from the 50s. So the 60s came, and it was all of us white guys trying to do black music, or create that. Now, I mean, let's be real, man. That's it.
That is it. That is it.
Those are the guys. That's the real deal. So us being in the studio, the 60s kind of brought all of, us white guys in to try and do what these guys were just doing naturally. And so that's why when I say Love and Feeling, when we had a little, not trouble doing Love and Feeling, but it just was a different gear for us. We were just rhythm and blues singers. And so the 60s was magical, man. And then the 70s came along and all these great singers, songwriters. Not with the 70s, the 70s was probably the greatest musical time, I would say. I mean, when Elton John and Carole King and James Taylor and, all these great singer-songwriters came along, boy, it changed the world musically. They were using great musicians, real rock and roll players, because in the 60s, the early 60s, we were using a lot of jazz musicians that were kind of faking rock and roll. So I would use our band because they were rock and roll players. And so anyway, the 60s, as far as creative, it was just a magical time.
Let's fast forward to the 80s.
Oh, God.
You recorded an incredible, memorable movie duet, and actually recorded a number of film and TV songs, of course. A duet with Gladys Knight for the Stallone movie Cobra. But the duet, of course, I've Had the Time of My Life with Jennifer Warren, set the bar high for duets and ballads and songs in film. So would you say this broadened your horizon to a whole new generation? I mean, we're talking... that was such a massive time for music. Again, coming back and discovering these beautiful, huge songs of the 60s. It was fantastic. You did talk about Ghost earlier, briefly.
Yeah, the 80s, I mean, it was like being reborn, I mean, Top Gun came out. Love and Feeling was in Top Gun. If they would have re-released it, it would have been a number one hit again. And then the next year, I've Had the Time of My Life for Dirty Dancing with Jennifer. And then the next year, they put Unchained Melody and Ghost. And I'm telling you, we were back bigger than ever.
Incredible.
It was incredible, and an incredible time, man. I mean, it put Bobby and I back. I mean, the 90s were some of the best years for the Righteous Brothers. So we had this rebirth. I mean, some of the kids that would watch Time of My Life or Dirty Dancing or these movies, they would go home and tell their parents, man, wait until you hear these new guys, the Righteous Brothers. So no, that's why you were born as the Righteous Brothers. But it was an amazing time. And thank God for the movies. And thank God for Jimmy Einer. He called me on the phone. He said, and I don't know how he got my number, but he was putting the music together for Dirty Dancing and said, I want you to sing for this movie. And I had just recorded Lovin' on Borrowed Time with Gladys Knight for Sylvester Stallone. So, yeah, Sylvester, because it was a Cobra movie. And it was a great record, and Gladys Knight is one of the great singers, period. I said, I can't, because he wanted me to go from California to New York to record it. And I said, I can't do it because my wife, Paula, is going to be in labor any time. So I can't, and I promised her I would be here for the birth. And he said, well, okay, I'll call you. Keep calling you, and you tell me when she finally has the baby. So he would call me every week. And so I said, well, what movie is it? He says it's called Dirty Dancing. I said, well, that sounds like a bad porno movie. And he said, well, no. I said, okay, well, who's in it? He said, Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey. And I said, well, okay, who's that? And obviously they became monstrous stars. But so I said, send me the song. They sent me the song, and the guys that wrote it were like tenors. It wasn't, now I've had the time of my life. It wasn't that, now I've had the time. And so I didn't get it. And it wasn't kind of a song that I would do, you know? And, but Paula had the baby, and our child, McKenna, who is now on stage singing with me, doing I've Had the Time of My Life. But Jimmy called me and said, Jennifer Warnes wants to do it if she can sing it with you. And I said, oh God, Jennifer Warnes. I love Jennifer Warnes. Great voice. And it's kind of the Beauty and the Beast, you know, 'cause I think she had just had that hit with Joe Cocker, Up Where We Belong. And it was, you know, it was that perfect magical Beauty and the Beast. And so me being the Beast, obviously. So actually, Jennifer and I went in and did the song knowing that nobody was ever going to hear it. We'll just go in and do it, and just to work together. So we went in, we did it, and we probably did in the studio probably about 10 different tracks. I sang the song, she sang her part. Then I think she did a third note, and I did a third note, and some answers, you know. And so we just did a pile of stuff and said, here. And Michael Lloyd and Einer put it together. Amazing, because when they put it together, and by the time we recorded it and it was down there where I could sing, now I've had, and it's just very strange because when it got to the chorus, once again, I couldn't sing the chorus. So I would do the melody until it get to the chorus. Then Jennifer sang the melody and I sang the harmony underneath her. And so it was a very, very strange record. Incredible. And so the movie came out, and I'm on the road with the Righteous Brothers, and a disc jockey was introducing the Righteous Brothers that night. And he said, you know, we're playing the heck out of your song. I said, what song? They said, the song you did for the movie. I said, what movie? He said, I don't know. He said, you're singing it with a girl. So I'm thinking, oh, great, man. That's my record with Gladys Knight. And I said, Gladys Knight? He said, no. And I said, Jennifer Warnes? He said, yeah, that's it. We're playing the heck out of it. Now we're on the road, so I'm not listening to the radio, or I don't know that the movie's doing. And by the time the tour was over, and it was only about a 2-week tour, by the time I got home, it was number one in the nation, in the world, actually. And the movie was just a giant. And I can remember my wife and I went to the movie show to see the movie. And that's the first time I had heard the song in the movie done. It was the perfect song in the perfect place of that movie, because these kids would watch the movie and run right out and buy the single, buy the album. I think the album, I could be wrong, I was told that it sold about 32 million albums. Wow. And the single was probably close, because they gave me, RCA gave me, and Jennifer, I think, a platinum album of every country that it was in number one. Wow. And I mean, it was a wall of these so I gave them away for Christmas presents. But it was.
We just missed Christmas, so I would have put my order in.
Yeah, man, and I could get. Well, here's a few for you right here. Bobby and I, because of these movies, and we re-released Unchained Melody because we asked the record company, "Are you going to re-release Unchained Melody because it's getting played like crazy?" And they said, "No, we're not going to release it." So I called Mike Curb. I was recording with Mike. I said, "I think we ought to re-record Unchained Melody and put it out." So we did, and became a hit again. We recorded an album, the reunion album, or so. Not a very good album, by the way, but it went to #1, and we sold a million copies of that. So we were in the 90s. We were bigger in the 90s than we were in the 60s. Pretty cool.
According to BMI, You've Lost That Loving Feeling has become the most played song on radio and television in the 20th century.
Yeah, well, BMI stands for Bill Medley Incorporated. Yeah, it's not. No, yeah, years ago we were told that it's the most played record in the history of American radio, and and it took the place of Yesterday, I think, by the Beatles. So we finally got back on, and and you know what, man, that's one of the coolest things that could happen to Bobby and I, because going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was amazing. That's a huge, huge honor, because it's really saying from the business, yeah, you guys put a stamp on this business, and but there's about 300 people in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So to be one of 300 is great, but to have the most played record is just it's amazing. It's an out-of-body thing. We never could wrap our head around it. Still can't, and don't even want to. It just is what it is, and it's a great song. And if any producers or writers or any that are listening to this, it was a great song, a great producer, and he made us do a great vocal. So you take all those together, and if you can get airplay, now you got a hit record, and you got a real meaningful hit record. And so that's what it takes. It starts with the song. Song is always, it's like location. It's song. Then I believe it's the producer that can produce that song great, and he goes out and gets an artist that can sing that song, and kill that song. So that's, I'd like to say the singer's the most important thing, but I think the singers are just a big part of the puzzle, but we're just one piece of the puzzle, and I'm very happy to be a piece of that puzzle.
I think you're far too modest, but I love the fact that you're modest and humble about it.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you ever so much, Bill. This has been truly an amazing pleasure. I can't tell you from being a kid and hearing you, my whole life, and now to get to talk to you is absolutely incredible. Thank you.
Well, thank you, man. It was a pleasure. And it was fun. We have to meet up sometime.
Definitely. Once all this COVID schmovid stuff is
over.
Oh,
God. Please. First time I've been out of work in 60 years. Jeez. Come on, man. Gee, Christmas.
Thank you ever so much. I really appreciate it.